or false? Alzheimer's disease is a normal part of aging. If you answer true, you're not alone. According to the Alzheimer's Association, almost 60% of us believe Alzheimer's is a typical part of aging. But this is not true. Why is there so much misunderstanding about this disease? Here to help clear up some of these misconceptions and answer other questions is Dr. Rhoda Oh, Professor of Neurology at Boston University School of Medicine and Director of Neuropsychology and Investigator at the Framingham Heart Study. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Oh. These statistics point to an alarming lack of information and misunderstanding about Alzheimer's. Why is there so much misunderstanding, so many myths about Alzheimer's?
Well, I think one of the issues with Alzheimer's disease is that it's just one type of dementia, and the presentation of Alzheimer's disease can actually take on different kinds of forms. And I think combined that makes it very difficult. The other aspect about this disease is it comes on slowly over time. And so in that pathway, I think that it becomes very difficult to differentiate, between Alzheimer's disease, normal aging, and maybe other types of dementia.
So Alzheimer's is not quite the same as dementia. There are other types of dementia, you say. What are some examples?
So Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia, but the other types would be vascular dementia, frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, as some examples.
But similar symptoms, would you say, in some cases?
They have their own set of symptoms, but they do overlap across dementias, which I think is one issue. The other thing is that the dementia, while you may get some specific diagnoses, in fact, they actually overlap. So you won't necessarily have pure forms of Alzheimer's disease versus vascular dementia.
I see. What are the risk factors for Alzheimer's, and are there any steps we can take to reduce these risks?
So I think that we're still in the process of determining what are those risk factors, and because it's a complicated disease, it seems that there are a number of pathways in which the disease may come from. So some of the risk factors that there seems to be some consensus, in terms of the data, are some of the lifestyle risk factors. So that would be things like low physical activity, poor diet, maybe you're not sleeping enough. These are some of the modifiable risk factors that I think people can attend to.
Are there any specific warning signs or symptoms that we should be alert to, either in ourselves or family members, for example?
So I think one of the hallmark signs of Alzheimer's disease is supposed to be, memory, changes in your memory. But it turns out in Alzheimer's disease, it's not necessarily limited to just your memory. So some of the things that I would say in a normal environment is if you put someone in a new situation and they're having difficulty adapting to it, that would certainly be a concern. Another area of concern is what we call executive function, and that's really your ability to sort of plan and execute anything. And if people are starting to struggle with that, so one example, for instance, is that for people who've been paying their bills for a long time, if they're suddenly having difficulty doing so, I would start to worry about it.
I see. What about gender differences? Are men and women equally at risk for Alzheimer's?
No, women are at greater risk for Alzheimer's disease, but I think what's important to remember is that age is the biggest risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, and women, for the most part, have longer lifespans than men, which puts them at greater risk.
You touched on the loss of memory as sometimes being a symptom, but we don't need to worry if we walk into a room, as many of us do sometimes, and forget why we came in there.
Right, because I would like to mention I do that all the time. So I'd like to think that that's not a risk factor. But yes, I think that it's very common in the normal aging process to experiences changes in our memory. And that in of itself is not, you should not set off alarm signals in your brain. But I think it's when you start to have really consistent patterns of memory loss that's very different from what you've had in the past. I think that that's when you need to start.
What about any hopeful signs for cure or even treatment? Is there anything on the horizon?
I like to think that there's hope, but currently there's no treatment for Alzheimer's disease. I think one of the issues right now that we're looking at from the research perspective is the issue of whether we're detecting the disease a little bit too late in its progression, and so that the current treatments are not as effective. So if we use cancer as a model, for instance, where early detection is definitely the best prognosis for treatment effectiveness, I think that that's really where the field is headed right now.
Okay. Dr. O, thank you very much for joining us at the Fiorente Health Desk. People can go to our website or Facebook to learn more. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Fiorente Health Desk. If any of our stories raised questions for you, or if you'd like to tell us about your experiences or share a story idea, leave us a comment on our website. You can also join the conversation on our Facebook page. Find us at www.facebook.com/Fiorente Health Desk. Follow us on Twitter at Fiorente Media. Until next time, this has been Fiorente Health Desk, your most trusted source for health news and information.